Growing up, it was never a secret that Lindsay was Mom's favorite. I don't say that bitterly, just plainly. Lindsay was the golden child. The straight-A student, the homecoming queen, the one who could do no wrong. I, on the other hand, was just me. I got B's, I wore hand-me-downs without flair, and I never quite figured out how to make Mom laugh the way Lindsay did. When we were little, Mom used to braid Lindsay's hair in the mornings before school while I sat on the floor trying to do my own ponytail. She'd tell Lindsay, "You're going to be something special." I was never quite sure what she thought I was going to be. By the time we were in high school, the roles were fully locked in. Lindsay went to prom with the quarterback. I worked weekends at the public library and stayed home to help clean. After college, she got a job in PR in Chicago. I stayed local, took community college courses, and helped Mom run errands while working part-time at a nonprofit. Lindsay visited a few times a year. When she did, it was a whole production. Mom would scrub the house spotless, plan a 3-course meal, and act like royalty was coming. When I came over, she barely looked up from her shows. The thing is, I didn't resent Lindsay. Not exactly. She had charm. She had polish. And she never failed to remind me, playfully but pointedly, how Mom just got me better. It was always said with a laugh, like a joke only she was allowed to make. "Don't be mad. You know I'm Mom's favorite," she'd tease over wine during one of her brief visits. I'd fake a smile. Every time. Because the truth was, she wasn't wrong. Things didn't really change until about 2 years ago. Mom started forgetting little things, her purse, her keys, appointments. I brushed it off as age at first. But then it became names. Words. Directions. One night, she called me in a panic because she couldn't remember where she parked at the grocery store she'd been going to for 15 years. I tried bringing it up to Lindsay. "You're overreacting," she said. "Mom's always been a little forgetful." She wasn't being cruel. Just dismissive. Like she couldn't process the idea of Mom being fragile. But I lived 10 minutes away. I saw it. I was the one who helped with bills, called doctors, replaced expired food in the fridge. Lindsay sent her spa gift cards and commented on Instagram posts with heart emojis. Then came the call. I was at work organizing outreach packets when the hospital called. Mom had collapsed in her kitchen. A neighbor had found her when she didn't answer the door for a scheduled lunch. I dropped everything and drove straight there. Lindsay didn't pick up the phone until my 4th call. "I'm boarding a flight," she said, annoyed. "Can you just keep me updated?" She lived 2 hours away by plane. I lived 2 miles. So I sat in the ER alone, filling out forms, holding Mom's hand as they ran tests, waiting through the buzz of machines and the scent of antiseptic. She wasn't awake, but I didn't leave, not even when visiting hours ended. I texted Lindsay updates. She responded with emojis and, "Ugh, poor thing." But she didn't come that night, or the next. And somewhere between adjusting the pillows on Mom's hospital bed and signing another consent form, I realized something. I'd been treated like the extra daughter for most of my life. But when it mattered, I was the one who showed up. Lindsay arrived on the 3rd day. She breezed into the hospital room with a giant tote bag, sunglasses perched on her head, and an iced coffee in hand, like she was stopping by brunch. "Oh my God, you poor thing," she said to Mom. Even though Mom was still groggy and barely conscious, she hugged me briefly, the kind of hug that barely touches your shoulders, and then turned to look around the room like she was assessing hotel accommodations. "I had to cancel 2 meetings and switch flights twice," she said, exasperated. "But of course I came. I'm the one who always comes through." I didn't say anything. What would have been the point? Lindsay sat next to the bed, scrolling through her phone, occasionally glancing up at the monitors like she understood what they meant. When the nurse came in to check vitals, Lindsay immediately asked, "Can you give us an update?" The nurse looked at me first. I'd been there for 3 days. Lindsay noticed. "Oh, right? You probably already asked a million questions," she said, then added with a little laugh, "Classic you." There it was again. The way she dismissed me while pretending to include me. When the doctor finally came in, Lindsay straightened up like she was about to give a press conference. But he looked at me. "We've already reviewed most of this, but your mother's had a mild stroke. She's stabilized, but there's cognitive impairment. Memory, language, it's likely been declining longer than anyone realized." I nodded. Lindsay blinked. "A stroke?" she repeated. "Are you sure?" "Yes," the doctor said gently. "We'll need to discuss long-term care planning." That was the moment I watched my sister's confidence wobble. We sat in silence after the doctor left. For the first time in days, I felt something like compassion for her. She looked small, out of place in her designer coat and heels, sitting next to a frail version of the mother she worshipped. "Why didn't you tell me it was this bad?" she asked quietly. I hesitated. I tried. She didn't respond, just stared at Mom. The next day, Lindsay took over. She brought a laptop, started researching facilities, called her husband twice to discuss insurance and long-term implications. She spoke in that business-like tone she'd mastered, saying words like care coordination and financial leverage. Meanwhile, I helped Mom use the bathroom, cleaned her up after a spill, and held her hand during the MRI. She kept squeezing mine, even though I wasn't sure she always recognized me. Later that evening, Lindsay pulled me aside in the hallway. "This is a lot. I'm going to need help." I blinked. "I've been helping." "No, I mean like, the real stuff, not just errands. Decisions." I felt something sting behind my eyes, but I swallowed it down. "Linz," I said, trying to stay calm. "You've been here for 36 hours. I've been here for 3 days. I've been handling things for months." She didn't apologize. She just looked tired. "I didn't know," she said. It was the first honest thing I'd heard from her in a while. That night, Mom woke up and whispered something while I held a straw to her lips. I leaned in. "You always took care of me," she murmured, her words slow but clear. It wasn't much. But for the first time in years, it felt like I mattered to her in a way Lindsay never could quite touch. And Lindsay saw it too. By day 5, the hospital room had become a second home. Lindsay kept showing up every morning with a fresh coffee and a fresh list of tasks. Calls to rehab centers, insurance questions, paperwork. Meanwhile, I stayed overnight, helped Mom eat, spoke with nurses, and learned how to gently brush her hair without tugging. I knew how she liked her water, where the call button was, and what each pill did. We were both helping, but in different ways. And it was starting to show. It came to a head on a Tuesday afternoon when the social worker came to talk about discharge options. "There's a decent in-home rehab program," I said, flipping through the brochure. "It's covered by insurance and she wouldn't have to move." "That's not sustainable," Lindsay said immediately. "She can't live alone anymore." "She won't be alone. I live 10 minutes away." Lindsay frowned. "You're busy. You work. You don't have the space." I looked at her. "And you do." She opened her mouth, then paused. "I could figure it out. Your guest room is a Peloton studio. You don't have to be so snippy," she snapped. "You don't have to act like I've done nothing." I snapped back. The social worker wisely excused herself. We stood there, in the fluorescent-lit hallway, surrounded by posters about heart health and hand hygiene. "You've always resented me," Lindsay said, "because Mom and I were close." "No," I said, voice shaking. "I resented that you never saw me, that you thought being Mom's favorite meant I didn't matter." She blinked. "That's not fair. You made it a joke, a title, something to brag about. But when she fell, when she forgot how to eat, when she cried because she didn't recognize her own kitchen, I was the one here. I didn't get to fly in after the damage was done and call it love." Silence. Then, "I didn't know how bad it was." I nodded. "You didn't want to." We didn't talk for the rest of the afternoon. But that night, Lindsay came back to the hospital with a travel bag and a pillow. "I'll take the cot tonight," she said softly. "You should sleep in your own bed." It wasn't an apology, but it was a start. The next few days passed quietly. We started working as a team, awkward at first, then more naturally. I handled the daily routines, Lindsay managed the logistics. She was better with forms. I was better with feelings. Mom had good moments and bad ones. One day she asked me if I still lived in that yellow house with the swing. We never lived in a yellow house. But then she'd look me in the eye and say my name clearly with warmth that felt brand new and familiar at the same time. One morning, I walked in to find Lindsay adjusting Mom's blanket, humming softly. "You used to sing that to me when I was sick," Mom whispered. Lindsay blinked. "You remember that?" "Bits and pieces," Mom smiled faintly. "You both were good girls." We exchanged a look. It was the first time I'd ever heard her say we were equal. Mom came home a week later, not to Lindsay's condo in the suburbs, but to her own house with a rotating care team and me living 10 minutes away. Lindsay flew back to Chicago. She had a husband, a job, and a life that couldn't be paused forever. But something had changed between us. She started calling more often. Not just for updates, but to ask how I was doing. She sent care packages for Mom and for me. Sometimes she'd Venmo me lunch money with a note that said, "For being the stronger one." And every Sunday, without fail, she FaceTimed during Mom's favorite show. She even remembered what time it came on. I won't lie and say everything was fixed overnight. Mom had more bad days than good. She'd forget where she was, who I was. She once accused me of stealing her purse when it was in her lap. Those moments stung more than I ever expected. But then she'd reach for my hand or hum a lullaby I hadn't heard in decades. And for a few minutes, I'd feel like the little girl she never saw finally being seen. Lindsay came back to visit in the fall. It was the first time we were all together since the hospital. We made soup, watched an old movie Mom loved, and sat in silence when she dozed off mid-scene. As I was washing dishes that night, Lindsay came into the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. "You know," she said carefully, "I used to think Mom's love was some kind of competition. I kept drying a plate, waiting. But watching you with her, I think you won something bigger." I looked at her. "It wasn't a game." "I know," she said quietly. "That's what I didn't understand." Before she left, she hugged me. A real one, this time. The kind that doesn't leave room between shoulders. "Thank you," she said, "for everything you've done." I didn't say you're welcome. I just nodded. And for once, it felt like enough. Now some days I catch myself replaying childhood moments, Mom brushing Lindsay's hair while I waited, unnoticed. And other times I remember the hospital, Mom reaching for my hand, calling my name when everything else slipped away. She may not always remember who I am now, but I remember who I became because of her. And that's something no favorite title could ever replace.